Everyone okay? Let me know if you can't hear or anything else. Looks like we're good to go. All right, thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to everybody. My name's Fields Mosley. I'm the Communications Director here at Maricopa County, the spokesperson for the Board of Supervisors. Want to thank you, whether you're joining us online or you're here in person. Thanks to those that did show up here today. This is going to be our first of 3 press conferences before Election Day. After that, we'll move our operations over to McTech, so we'll have more information on that coming out over the next couple of weeks. But we really wanted to thank you guys for being here. You know, we want to be accessible to our partners out there and journalists, and really, but we need your help to communicate with voters, of course. And so we hope we're going to provide some good information today that voters need to know, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to be here and help us share that message. So you probably know we're the 4th most populous county in the country, also the third largest election jurisdiction in the country when it comes to the number of registered voters. So a big operation here. This is a big undertaking to do elections and I shouldn't say every couple of years, because elections are going on year round. Some of them are smaller in scale, but certainly these presidential cycles are huge. And if you were here in 2020, you know that. We're also one of the most watched operations, of course, in Arizona. 60% of the population is here, and we're a swing state now. So a lot of these races will be very close, we expect, and you'll hear a little bit more about that today. So we have 3 speakers for you today, and then a couple other people available to answer questions if you have questions for them. I have Supervisor Bill Gates. He represents District 3 on the Board of Supervisors. I have Jennifer Lewer. She is the Deputy Elections Director over Communications over at the Elections Department. Also, Zach Shira. He is the Assistant County Manager and oversees elections as well as communications and government relations. Chief Frank McWilliams is with us from MCSO. He's here if you have any questions about security, but just so you know, we do plan to have Sheriff Skinner with us next week when we have our press conference then, and he'll be able to go into greater detail and talk a little bit more about security planning as we get closer to Election Day. Also, I have the Director of Elections, Scott Jarrett. He's with us today because inevitably somebody will ask a very detailed question or want some sort of data, and of course Scott is the only guy that has that file cabinet in his head. So we'll have Scott here just in case somebody has a more detailed question requiring that. So once we go to questions in just a few moments, I'll have Brittany Conklin is on my staff. She's over here. She has a microphone. Please give us a moment, ask your question into the microphone, and then she'll get out of the way. And then, so that's so everybody that's watching on YouTube can hear the question that's being asked. So we thank you for that. So our first speaker today, I'll turn it over to Supervisor Bill Gates.
Thank you, Fields. Appreciate it. Great to see everyone here. We really appreciate all that you do to get the information out to our residents, to our voters about this exciting election that has started now. We do have, as Fields said, we're the 4th largest county in the country. We've got 150 residents, new residents, moving here every day. So we know that every time we run an election, we have a new group of voters. And so it's very important to get out here and make sure that people know what to expect. One of the questions that I get asked a lot, why Maricopa County? Why is there so much interest in what's going on here? We are truly unique. We're unique in a lot of ways. We're a great community, fast-growing community, and very diverse. And one of the ways that we're diverse is in our politics. We're roughly 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democratic, 1/3 independent. And so that is one of the reasons that we do have a lot of focus on Maricopa County, in addition to the fact that we're 60% of the population of the state of Arizona, which we would all agree is definitely one of the swing states that people are focused on as we go into the 2024 election. So wanted to just touch on a few things that we're really focused on in this particular election, and I know that a lot of you are talking about it already, and that is really the top line is the 2-page ballot. This is something that anyone who has gotten their ballot already has taken a look at it. They're well aware of it. And this is unique for us. It's actually the first time we've had a 2-page ballot since 2006. And the average ballot has 79 contests on it. So that's a lot of different races for people to vote on. And so that's why we have asked all of our voters to make a plan. Make a plan whenever it is and wherever it is that you decide to vote. We are expecting heavy turnout this year, and so that's why we're really encouraging people to vote early. And the great thing is you have multiple options on how you want to vote early. If you want to vote early by mail, vote at home, you can do that. If you want to vote in person early, you can do that as well. We want to give you as many options as is possible so that you aren't forced to vote on Election Day. Now, having said that, we know that a lot of people do like to vote on Election Day. We encourage that, and what we would encourage, though, is if you're going to vote on Election Day, vote in person and use that on-site tabulator so that those votes will be tabulated on that evening as opposed to dropping off your early ballot on Election Day. That's going to elongate the process. Now, we have already mailed out ballots at Maricopa County to 80% of our voters. So they've got those ballots at home. I would say, you know what, take some time now, vote the ballot, and mail it in. This is definitely the time to do it. Now, if you are more of a vote in person, on October 9th, we opened up 12 vote centers. So since October 9th, there have been 12 different vote centers across Maricopa County where people can vote. And we've already had over 20,000 people check in to vote at those in-person. Now this Friday, we're going to open up 39 more of these in-person vote centers. So that'll take us up to 51. So as of this Friday, there'll be 51 vote centers across Maricopa County where people can vote in person. But once we get to Election Day on November 5th, we'll have 246 vote centers across Maricopa County. That's more than we had in 2020 and in 2022. And then the last thing I wanted to cover for you guys is some of the websites that are out there. And I have people come up to me, they ask me different questions, and usually the answer is go to this website or go to that website. So we just want to make sure that everyone was aware of these. Number one, ballot-ready.vote. If you want to see what your ballot looks like, go on to ballot-ready.vote. You'll see your own sample ballot, and you can even print off a sample ballot there, which is nice. If you're someone who votes in person, you can bring that one with you. You could go ahead and fill that sample ballot out in advance, so now you have an idea of how you want to vote, and then bring that in with you to the vote center. Also, if you have decided, hey, you know what, I think I want to vote by mail this time, it's not too late. Go to request.maricopa.vote, and you can request a mail-in ballot for this election. Again, you can prepare it at home and mail it in. And then finally, if you want more information on all these different races that we have going on, you can go to candidatelist.maricopa.vote and find out all sorts of information on the items that are on your ballot. So again, we appreciate you being here today. We appreciate all of your time. And now I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Elections Director, Jennifer Lewer.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jennifer Lewer, and as Supervisor mentioned, I'm Deputy Elections Director in Maricopa County Elections. So Maricopa County began preparing for this two-page ballot months ago. As soon as it became a possibility, the staff and the executives at the Elections Department realized that this was going to have an impact, not only on voters, but also on how we administer our elections system. So you might think, well, outside of the voters, why would it matter for election administration? However, we will, for example, had about 2.1 million voters in a previous election. With a two-page ballot, that means 4.2 million pieces of paper. So what did we change? We've hired additional election workers and poll workers to support our efforts. We will have over 4,000 temporary election workers that will be working to administer Maricopa County's election. We've added 10% more vote centers because we know there will be lines on election day. Historically, that has always occurred, but with that two-page ballot, we know that it will take more time for people to fill out that ballot. In addition to that, we added check-in stations within the vote centers so that as people check in and have their ballot printed, we're able to move those folks along so that we can hopefully avoid lines, and then they'll get to their voting booth. And we have 23% more voting booths since 2022 as well. We've also worked a lot with our poll workers. We wanted to make sure that they had the right training so that as people vote that 2-page ballot, that they have the checks and balances that they need to ensure that that process goes as smoothly as possible. We've also added places where voters can drop off their ballots. We are seeing a huge response in the last week of voters who are bringing their ballots, and the 2-page ballot's a little bit thicker in that envelope, so we wanted to make sure that we were able to address that early on. Once those ballots then come back to our tabulation center, we knew we would have impacts on ballot processing. We want voters to return both pages of the ballot if possible. That, from an administration standpoint, is the simplest way for us to track and administer the election. But we know the reality is that not everybody will do that. So we will have some voters who might return page 1 and page 2. We might have voters who only return page 1 or page 2. In both of those scenarios, it is easy for us to continue with the work, but we will have some voters who maybe their partner or their husband or wife returns 2-page 1s or 2-page 2s. That will create issues because we don't know which ballot is tied to that voter in that early voting process. So if at all possible, we would ask that both pages be returned, even if people don't fill out all of the contests. We're increasing staffing at our ballot processing as well because, again, we're handling double the number of the sheets of paper. And so we are looking to both have extra shifts, night shifts, if necessary, in ballot processing and then in the next step that takes place in election administration, and that's through tabulation. We have since 2020 and 2022 invested more in our high-speed tabulators that are in our ballot tabulation center. We also have gone under pretty extensive construction and have improved and increased the amount of space that we have available to us, and we will be using every inch of that space, filling it with workers so that we can make this process run as smoothly as possible. Again, we're hiring additional workers, we're adding those night shifts, and we want folks to know that the people that are working in these positions, they are their friends, their family, their community members. We also looked at sort of the nuts and bolts of what we would be doing. Believe it or not, we actually purchased new pallets because when you are storing and housing 4.2 million pieces of paper, you have to be able to have that weight. And we found that our old pallets were not able to handle that weight, so we purchased new pallets. We also took a look at how we organize the ballots because we knew that we would be having to store these maybe 4 million pieces of paper inside of our fireproof ballot vault. So the level of detail that the staff have gone into in the last several months is really, I think, a testament to how committed we are to administering a safe and secure election. And although we will be tabulating ballots more quickly than ever, we want people to know, and you're going to hear this a lot in the next few weeks, that it will take time to get results. This is greatly impacted by people who drop off their early ballots on election day because our races will be close. As you all know, the media call races. At Tabulation Center, we're focused on counting all of the ballots. This year, we do expect that it will take between 10 and 13 days to complete tabulation of all of the ballots that come in, but we ask for the community's patience as we want to make sure that this is a secure process, but we also want to make sure that it is an accurate process. So who will be doing all of this work? I'm going to bring up Assistant County Manager Zach Shira to talk a little bit about hiring.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Zach Shira. I'm the Assistant County Manager for Elections and External Affairs here at Maricopa County. And today I'll be taking everybody through the numbers for the 2024 general, both a hiring update as well as an early ballot return update. But I first want to start by thanking our permanent and our temporary staff who work in elections. They are on the front line, and we could not do what we do without them working for us. And as Jennifer just mentioned, and we often say to you all, these are our community members who run elections in Maricopa County. They are your friends, your family, your neighbors. And they all come from different backgrounds, different political beliefs, and different life experiences. But the one thing that they all have in common on Election Day is that they are registered voters who are doing their service to this community and working in elections. Hiring for this election is ahead of schedule. Currently, we've hired 584 of the 786, or 74% of the MCTEC temporary employees needed for the general election. These positions include tabulation clerks, couriers, signature verification clerks, trainers, recruiters, and a number of other critical positions needed to administer the election. We also rely heavily on our county workforce to staff elections. For the 2024 general election, we're hoping to hire over 700 county employees. As you know, we've adjusted our election night procedures to comply with the law that says we have to hand count ballot affidavit envelopes at the vote center before we close down that vote center and get results back to MCTEC. In order to do that, we've staffed up using county employees' trusted names, faces, to ensure that we can get that process done quickly and safely and get those results back to MCTEC in a timely and safe manner. We appreciate our county staff dedication for this important role. We currently have 490 of that 708 county employees needed for that role. And then finally, the backbone of elections are poll workers. Vote centers are staffed by individuals from different parties, and we strive to ensure that this is an even number at each and every one of our voting locations. Currently, we have 2,669 of the 2,837 positions needed. Of those, 1,125 are registered Democrats, 1,062 are registered Republicans, and 482 are registered with another party or identify as independent. We are extremely grateful for these election workers. Now on to ballot returns as of yesterday. To date, we have seen 2,064,517 ballots requested by eligible registered voters. We've received 405,649 ballots of all types. That includes military and overseas voters, as well as in-person voters. As Supervisor Gates noted, we've had 19,613 people check in to vote in person. We've had 330,360 vote by mail, and 55,676 have dropped off their ballot. So with 2 weeks left until Election Day, more than 400,000 people have cast their ballot in Maricopa County. And if I have one message for voters here today, it is this, that the longer ballot and higher interest in this 2024 general election will create longer lines on Election Day, and that's okay. But if you want to save time and you want to avoid those lines, vote early, either in person or by mail. That'll save you time, and it'll help us report more results on Election night. Thank you, and with that, we'll go back to Jennifer for questions.
And I want to just quickly apologize to Zach. We got some updated numbers in our PowerPoint that he did not get notified of. So the numbers, we literally updated them just a few hours ago in the PowerPoint slides, if you would like to go with those. Again, it's 600 of 786 temporary election workers have been hired at MCTEC, 526 of the 708 county employees, and then our poll worker numbers did not change. We've also got a sample 2-page ballot. It is just as long as we've all been talking about. We're excited, though, that voters are able to have a say in so many things that impact our community. And now we're going to begin with question and answer, and I'll be bringing folks up who have a little bit more knowledge on a lot of the topics I'm sure you'll be asking about. So if you just want to raise your hand, we'll have Brittany head over to you with the microphone, and we'll take our first question. And if you could state your name and which affiliate you're with, that would be great.
All right. Hi, I'm Colleen. I'm with Channel 12. Couple of questions for you guys. I think this is kind of a two-parter. I know that last slide put out, 405,649 returned ballots. I know some ballot trackers are saying that's a lower turnout than in 2020 at the same time period before the election. Is that what you, and I know that there is a concern of lines on election day, but is there a concern of even longer lines because of maybe less turnout
I'm gonna have,
or returned ballots?
let's stop there. Scott, why don't you come up and talk a little bit about 2020?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Scott Jarrett, Maricopa County Elections Director. And we are seeing a little bit of a lag of where we were in 2020. But the last few days, we've actually seen an uptick in turnout. So I am expecting that we will start approaching very close to those 2020 numbers. We'll say in 2020, that was a historic year for turnout, but also early in-person voting and early drop-offs in 2020. That was largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But I am confident that we'll still, Arizona is our voters really like to participate early through the mail, or whether that's dropping off the early ballots at any of our voting locations. And again, we're seeing that uptick in those last few days. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
Just if there's a concern of longer traffic and longer lines, that will just because of.
As we've mentioned, a presidential election cycle, lines on election day are typical, but I don't think that we'd expect to see longer lines due to the current turnout. We still have many options for voters to still participate. A whole week of early voting. As we mentioned, on this Friday, we'll be opening up additional early voting locations. And another thing with this Friday is they're actually going to be open up later into the evening, till 7 p.m. each of those days. So lots of options for those voters to still participate, or up till this Friday, request an early ballot in the mail and have that delivered to them.
Hi, Erica Stapleton with 12 News, and I also have a multi-pronged question, if that's okay. I'm wondering if threats against election workers or poll workers have made it difficult to hire people this election cycle.
So thanks for the question. I think when you look at the numbers that we presented of the hiring right now, it's actually ahead of even where we anticipated. So it's really encouraging to see the amount of interest, not just with the voters, but also with the people who are willing to work as election workers. We've been committed at Maricopa County, the Board of Supervisors, the Recorder, and others, that we want our election workers to feel safe. We've taken the actions that we needed to. If you all have been down to McTech, you've seen the physical barriers that we put in place to make people feel comfortable. So certainly these workers are ready to come down there. We have the chief with us here who can certainly address any of those issues, but we've been very encouraged by the response that we've had, not only from people out in the community, but also our county workers who've stepped up so that we're in a position to comply with the new laws that have been passed by the legislature.
And I do want to say that we are hiring at a faster rate than we have previously, and that says a lot about the community in Maricopa County who are willing to come out and to support the elections.
Hi, Heidi Hommel, KTAR News. Are there any concerns about tabulating the two-page ballot, possibly getting jammed or something, or it's just standard as a one-page?
So tabulating a two-page ballot is essentially just paper. We have practiced, we have done mock elections. We are looking at how the adjudication process might be impacted versus if it was just one page, and making sure that all of the staff in the tabulation center understand how to process those. Even though the ballots are different pages, it's still the same number of contests. So we're not as concerned, but certainly anytime you're tabulating that many pieces of paper, things are going to happen. There may be jams, and the staff is trained and prepared to respond to those.
Hi again. Still back to security a little bit, but is the county keeping track of any threats against poll workers? I know it's been an issue before. How is the county keeping track of that? And then as it pertains to security, we've seen McTech, but what's been happening at voting centers? What sort of security measures are being taken there? And then, sorry, I'm just adding on to this while I have the mic, but we've seen reports that maybe snipers will be on buildings outside by McTech and drones will be used. I'm hoping to just confirm some of the measures that are being taken for security on election night as well.
I'm going to bring up Chief McWilliams, but I do want to talk about the fact that we are not having the number of threats that we have seen previously. But that doesn't mean that we don't prepare for those types of instances. So we certainly have seen a reduction, but that cycle is typically can ebb and flow based on an election cycle. Maricopa County Sheriff's Office address some of the more specific areas of your question.
Again, Frank McWilliams, Deputy Chief, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. There's a lot packed into that question, so I'll try to hit it all. Law enforcement throughout Maricopa County is committed to providing the safety and security of everybody involved in Election Day, whether that be a polling site, a poll worker, an elected official, anybody and everybody. And one thing we do really well in Maricopa County is collaborate with the other law enforcement partners, and we've been doing so for the past year to come up with a robust plan that may be thrown at us on Election Day, the days after as well.
Will there be drones or snipers on the building?
We have a robust plan that we're probably not going to get into the details here today of it, but we do have robust security plans, measures in place throughout Maricopa County.
And I'll just add too that, you know, people understand, many of you have been around here for a while, and you know this is not our first rodeo. Unfortunately, we have been in this type of environment now for multiple cycles, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank the chief and everyone at Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We are so fortunate to have the partners that we have, in addition to other law enforcement, local law enforcement, as well as federal law enforcement. I believe that we have as good a collaboration as any region in the country. And this is not something, unfortunately, that's not what you see everywhere. But we have it here, and that is exactly, I think you can tie that directly back to why we're having these good numbers of people agreeing to work these elections again, because there is a commitment from the Sheriff's Office and from other law enforcement to make sure that everyone is safe during this important election.
Cameron Arcam with the New York Post. My question is about early vote centers. How were some of those kind of initial 12 locations decided? Because I know you look at the map, some of the locations, there's not as much up in kind of Northeast Valley, some other parts of the county. And how were those typically decided where those get opened? And will the new vote centers that open this weekend kind of be more spread out?
Sure, you bet. I'm going to have Scott Jarrett take a stab at that question.
Great. That our voting locations are dispersed throughout the county geographically, so that's in the far East Valley and portions of Maricopa County, the northeast portions of the county, also central portions of the county, as well as in the west portions of the county. So to make sure that there are some easily accessible for all voters, but that next phase will then be opening up. We'll have 39 additional open up this Friday. Actually, next week, we'll have 52 voting locations open throughout Maricopa County. And we look at data to identify where we should put those locations, but also make sure that those voters aren't having to drive those long distances to be able to participate. And we've seen a very healthy turnout at our early voting locations. It's been able to accommodate the current turnout. So we're satisfied with where our early voting footprint is, being able to serve those voters that want to participate early in person.
100,000 or so voters on that list, you know, with the driver MVD issue. How have you guys combated if there was any confusion related to that, especially after the court ruling saying that they can vote this cycle? And then also, have you guys received a list of those voters yet from Fontes' office, and what steps are you guys taking to prepare for that after this election's wrapped up to let them know?
So as most of you know, administering elections in Maricopa County is a partnership, and it's a partnership between the Board of Supervisors and the County Recorder's Office. They oversee the voter rolls. We've actually got somebody here from the County Recorder's Office that can speak specifically to those questions. We obviously are in contact and communication, but we're going to go ahead and allow the County Recorder's Office to answer questions that are specific to the situation that you're referring to. Sorry about that.
This year was particularly hard to find enough voting locations with school districts dropping out. To spend to find enough voting locations, was it more than what you had to do in 2020? I was hearing numbers of upwards of a couple 100,000. So just wanted to see, did you have to dip more into the budget this year with kind of what issues you faced?
Do you have an exact number, Scott?
Actually, that's one of the numbers I don't have the exact number on, but we did budget over or right around $1 million to be able to procure all the different voting locations. It was well short of that. It was closer, or just right around 100,000 that we spent, but I don't have that exact figure. But we want to just thank our partners with the community, our churches that came out to support us. I know the LDS churches, they ended up providing over 30 voting locations to serve Maricopa County voters this election cycle. So we have fantastic partners that are willing to serve.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions on the 2-page ballot. Has it interfered with mailing and timing on mailing in any way, just being like bulkier packets? Has it cost more money? Those are my first two.
So those questions are going to be best answered by the recorder's office, who was responsible for mailing out those packets.
Okay. And for Scott, I think is when you have the 2 pages and some people only return one of them, how are you tracking like how many ballots come back? I've already seen some misinformation going around on this. People saying that they're not properly tracking this. So can you explain that?
So as we mentioned earlier, there is no requirement for a voter to return both pages. We would prefer that for our administrative purposes for tracking. So all of that is accounted for in our chain of custody documents. Our early ballot processing teams complete those forms. So as a envelope would come back and those bipartisan boards are separating those ballots, those 2-page ballots from that envelope or that single-page ballot, they'd be identifying on that envelope whether there were 2 pages returned or a single page. But again, there's no requirement for a voter to return both pages, and that'd be similar to at the voting location as well. If a voter decided not to return one of those pages to us, they were not required to. Now we want them to take that, hopefully not leave it in that voting booth, take both of those pages up to the tabulator, insert both of those pages into that tabulator as well. But again, there's no requirement for them to return both.
And I'm going to add to that. We're tracking voter turnout based on that first page in the initial numbers that we will report out. But obviously, when a voter is given credit for voting in a particular election, those turnout numbers will become solidified as we get post-election day.
BBC News. I had a question on those security changes. Sorry. The reports about drones, snipers, can you say if they're incorrect? Because, I mean, they're being repeated like crazy in the media. And then if you can talk broadly about the increased security, why that's needed, and then kind of what it says about a core part of our democracy being guarded, almost like a prison.
Opportunity to respond to some of those questions, but ultimately, I mean, all Valley law enforcement's committed, as I've mentioned, to the safety and security of elections. And while it is a core part of our democracy, that's what we're there for, is to help protect that democracy. Law enforcement throughout the Valley is going to be swift to deal with anybody who wants to interfere, harass, intimidate voters, poll workers, threaten any elected officials on election day. Law enforcement is not going to tolerate it. We're going to address it quickly and swiftly and hope to reduce any other furtherance of that illegal activity. So.
Actually, can I step into, I want to just comment a little bit about preparing and having this visual of security items. This is about making people feel safe. And so as an election worker and personally somebody who works in that building, understanding and knowing that these elements are out and visible to the community makes me feel safe as I come to work. Our vote centers, our poll workers are trained. They know that there is local law enforcement that is coordinated in the community so our poll workers can feel safe. And most importantly, we want our voters to feel safe. We want them to be able to come to a vote center and be able to cast that ballot without fear of intimidation. And so we're working very hard to address all of those issues. And because there is a presence of law enforcement, you can't make an automatic assumption that those threats are there, because they can also act as a deterrent as well to people who might have nefarious actions planned.
And then just one other thing I would say as it relates to what this says about our democracy. I think it's sad that we're having to do these things. It's sad that we're having to have this discussion. But that's why I think it's incumbent upon everyone running for office in Arizona and across this country to state clearly that this is unacceptable, and that language, violent language, language referencing different things that are going to be done to candidates or voters, it needs to stop across the political spectrum. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to step back from this, is if people raise their voices. And I'm proud of my colleagues here in Maricopa County and across the state of Arizona who've already done that.
Kind of part of this, having this increased security presence, a part of like deterring folks? And then also, are you working with any federal partners? Is there any federal authorities that will be present at any of these election sites?
Yeah, so again, we're not going to get into great detail about how we are protecting voters and workers, but we are doing it. And yes, we want people, just like Chief said, we want people to understand that if they're going to engage in any inappropriate behavior at the vote center or at the tabulation center, it will be dealt with, period. We're not going to get into the details of how we're accomplishing that, but I do want people to understand that when they go to vote centers, these are not militarized zones. These are the same vote centers that you've gone to for years. You can feel safe to go there with your family, with your kids, if you want them to come and participate in democracy. But the point is that at Maricopa County, when we started this back in 2022, when there were folks trying to intimidate our workers by taking pictures of them and their license plates, we're not going to put up with that. It's not acceptable in a democracy. It's not acceptable anywhere. So that's what this is all about, so that we can focus on things like two-page ballots and the issues and the platforms of the candidates who are running this year.
I had a follow-up on that. How are you treating voter intimidation this year might be different than the past? Like, for example, the Dropbox watchers were allowed to take photos and do all that last time. It sounds like there's a different approach this time, or am I just misinterpreting that?
I think it's dependent on the situation, and we are working with those folks who have indoor locations for people to drop off their ballots to make sure that there isn't any sort of an intimidation factor. We have 2 outdoor drop boxes in Maricopa County, one at McTech, one in Mesa, both of which are streamed 24/7 live on the internet. Anybody can log on at any point and watch folks drop off their ballots. We haven't seen any situations like we have historically, but I think it's going to be dependent on what occurs, who is there. We want to be respectful of people's First Amendment rights, obviously, but we also need to ensure that voters feel an outdoor ballot box, or going to their local city clerk's office to drop off their ballot.
If you know how much has been spent on security this election, and has law enforcement gotten any special training for Election Day?
So over the last 4 years, there's been a heavy investment by the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. It's right in the ballpark of about $10 million, but it's not entirely security. This was about improvements to McTech. These are an investment in our printers. We can get you very specific numbers that what the fencing costs when we put up the temporary fencing, and then MCSO costs after this, if you want to send us an email on it. But there has been a significant investment to protect the people, to protect the ballots, and then to protect the process and make it as efficient as possible.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question, and this might be one that you guys end up pitching to the recorder's office again, but it's related to the timing of mail ballots, but on a slightly different focus. Essentially, what I'm wondering is, I'm hearing about long hold times for people who are calling election officials with questions about getting a replacement ballot. Can you guys confirm that there's been some wait times on hold for people who are calling in? And would you recommend that they do something that's not calling in?
This is part of our partnership. Zach, you want to talk a little bit? You have some knowledge on that topic.
Sure, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, there's a ton of interest in this election, obviously, and that includes people calling the STAR call center, what we call it's our internal call center to the county. We staff up with resources to address election day questions such as this. It is managed under the purview of the recorder's office, so any specific questions about wait time or data, I'll refer you over to them. But we have continued to ensure that that is resourced from a board perspective and continue to offer them resources as they need it.
Recommend that voters who are looking to get a replacement ballot because theirs was lost in the mail continue calling in, or is there an email address?
You can call in or you can email. I think it's voterinfo@risk.maricopa.vote.
And how fast can they expect generally a response from that email address?
That is staffed by the recorder's office, but I think they're getting back to people within the same day.
Thank you.
Just restate for Chief there, did law enforcement get any, or are they receiving any training for Election Day specifically that's different? And thank you, I know I asked a lot.
Yeah, throughout the valley, we've been training our own staff, and other law enforcement agencies have been updating their staff. Election-related laws aren't something law enforcement traditionally deals with on a day-to-day basis. So we've been very fortunate with our federal, state, and local partners to provide us some resources and some additional material to train all law enforcement throughout the valley.
One more question. How great of a concern is there? You know, I know like we all hear, you know, all sorts of misinformation. I'm sure you guys hear it too. How great of a concern is it at this point? You know, things inevitably happen. People take pictures or post videos and claim things are something that they're not. How great of a concern are you guys finding this to, you know, whether it's inadvertent human error or just someone doing their job ends up as misinformation?
Well, as Supervisor Gates mentioned earlier, we've been sort of dealing with these types of situations for the last 4 years, the last 2 election cycles. We work hard to put out reliable, accurate information in a timely fashion to the community. We encourage voters, members of the media, those who seek to look for honest and concise answers to go to trusted sources, and that is through, we think, through the county. We work hard and we try to make that information as understandable as possible. That said, administering an election, it is a complex process, and Arizona state statutes are extensive on the laws that we need to follow. And so oftentimes, whether it's intentional or unintentional, the way things are done can be misconstrued. And we would hope that people who maybe don't understand exactly what's taking place, that they will seek out information. We have our website, which is justthefacts.vote, where we've taken a lot of this misinformation that's been put out into the community in the last 4 years and addressed that. It is critical because we are run by individuals and by members of our community, and there is no process that is perfect. But our elections are highly scrutinized. We have checks and balances every step of the way. We partner with the local county parties, the Republican County Party, the Democratic County Party, to make sure that we have those eyes from different areas to make sure that our processes are fair and that they are secure. I did also want to mention, if anybody does need a ballot and they are trying to request one, they can always go to a vote center as well. And so, again, this is about ensuring that voters have the information that they need, that you have the information you need. We will be doing these press conferences. I'm going to go ahead and bring Supervisor Gates up for some comments, and then Fields will be closing us out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great question about misinformation and the impact that it's going to have and what we're going to do. We at the board level, along with the recorder, have invested in communications in a way that we never have before, and making sure that we are out there seeing what's being said out in social media and elsewhere. And we will choose which misinformation we're going to respond to. But to give you sort of our North Star on this, we focused on that misinformation that's going to negatively impact the voter's experience, right? Where they're being given misinformation about whether vote centers are open, where to go, what the hours are, things that are going to directly, impact that experience. We take the slings and arrows every day. We're not going to sit here and waste public resources on responding to each and every one of those. But where it's going to impact the voter's experience and whether someone gets to exercise their fundamental right to vote, that's where we're going to respond, and we're going to respond very quickly and clearly.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Gates, and Scott and Zach and Jennifer and Chief McWilliams as well, and thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it. As I said earlier, we'll be sending out an advisory. We plan to have another one of these next Tuesday, same time, same location. Don't go to McTech. On Election Day, we will shift over to McTech, however, and we'll be getting some press conference schedules, hopefully going over there too in the next week or so, and we'll get more information. But Jennifer mentioned this. We have Just the Facts, of course, on the elections website. We invite you to share those resources. If you have specific questions, you have data questions, something like that we weren't able to answer today, if it's a public records request, we might have to take a little more time to get that information, but media@RISC. So when we say RISC, it's not with a K, it's with RISC. Don't ask me why, but it's an abbreviation for the recorder's part of our structure here on the IT side. .maricopa.gov. Media@risc.maricopa.gov. As I said, we're going to have another press conference, and then, of course, more as we get into the week after the election. So thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for sharing this information with your viewers, your listeners, and your readers. So let us know if you need anything else. See you guys soon.